The viewing platforms were crowded as always. Thousands of alien visitors pressed against the transparent barriers, watching the creatures below with a mixture of fear and fascination. Children pointed with their various appendages while adults discussed the merits of each predator in hushed, reverent tones. Curator Jalrek moved through the crowds with practiced ease, his forearms clasped behind his back in a gesture of pride. He had spent 30 years building this collection, and it showed. The Apex Predator exhibit was the finest in the galaxy, a testament to the Varanthian Empire's dedication to scientific excellence and public education. Each habitat was a masterpiece of environmental engineering. The Crithian razorhawks soared through their artificial canyon system, their metallic feathers catching the artificial sunlight. The Dalmaran tunneling serpents moved beneath the sands of their desert environment, occasionally surfacing to snatch the automated prey drones. Every species represented the absolute pinnacle of predatory evolution from their homeworld, 47 species. Each one carefully selected, studied, and maintained. Each one a killing machine honed by millions of years of evolution. Jalrek had traveled to the edges of known space to find them, risking his life more times than he cared to remember. But it was worth it. The exhibit educated billions and advanced xenobiological science by decades. He paused at the Yarnix enclosure. The pack was feeding, their crystalline claws tearing into synthetic meat with efficient brutality. Visitors gasped and stepped back despite the energy barriers. The Yarnix were ranked 23rd in the hierarchy, determined through careful behavioral analysis and controlled encounters. They were fast, coordinated, and absolutely lethal within their weight class. His communicator chirped. Jalrek tapped it with one of his lower hands. Yes? Curator, this is the intake facility. We have a situation that requires your attention. I'm observing the afternoon feeding cycle. Can this wait? No, sir. You need to see this. We've captured something interesting. Jalrek sighed but made his way through the facility. The intake center was located beneath the main exhibition halls, a sterile environment where new specimens were quarantined and evaluated. He found his lead xenobiologist, Crintel, waiting for him outside one of the examination rooms. What is it? Jalrek asked. Another suggestion from the ministry? I told them we're at capacity. Crintel's expression was difficult to read, but she seemed uncertain. That was unusual. She was one of the most confident scientists he had ever worked with. We intercepted a small vessel near the border. Single-deck, minimal weapons, clearly an exploration craft. The crew is alive and in holding. And they're claiming to be from a planet called Earth, a world we have no records of. We've run biological scans, she paused. I think you should see them yourself. Jalrek followed her into the observation area. Through the one-way viewing panel, he could see 13 beings in the holding cell beyond. They were bipedal, which was common enough. Their skin was a range of light browns and pinks without any obvious protective covering. No scales, no armor plating, no thick fur. They wore artificial coverings that appeared to be uniforms of some kind. One of them, a male with short brown hair, was standing near the barrier. He was speaking to the others in low tones, his eyes constantly scanning the room. The others were listening, occasionally nodding. It was clear this one was the leader. They call themselves humans, Crintel said. That one is their commander. His name is Jake Morrison, according to their ship's records. We've been monitoring them for 6 hours now. They look fragile, Jalrek observed. No natural weapons. Their sensory organs appear limited. What's so interesting about them? Crintel pulled up a holographic display. We accessed their ship's database. These creatures come from a Class 4 death world. Heavy gravity, extreme temperature variations, competitive ecosystem, but that's not the interesting part. She manipulated the display, showing images of Earth's surface. Their planet had multiple apex predators when their species evolved. Large carnivores with superior strength, speed, and natural weapons. Most of them are extinct now. The humans hunted them. Crintel zoomed in on images of extinct creatures. Giant cats with knife-like teeth, massive bears, enormous reptiles. They didn't just survive on a death world alongside superior predators. They eliminated them. All of them. Then they domesticated other predator species to serve them. Jalrek studied the images more carefully. That's unusual but not unprecedented. Prey species sometimes outlive their predators through various environmental changes. They weren't prey species, Crintel said quietly. We found their biological history. They evolved as hunters. They have forward-facing eyes for depth perception. Their hands are designed for tool manipulation and throwing objects with extreme accuracy. Their bodies are built for endurance rather than speed. They're persistence hunters, curator. They chase prey until it collapses from exhaustion, sometimes for days. Jalrek felt a chill run through his body. Persistence hunting was rare in the galaxy. Most predators relied on ambush tactics or short bursts of speed. The idea of a creature that simply refused to stop hunting was disturbing on a fundamental level. There's more, Crintal continued. We analyzed their cultural records. They have a history of warfare spanning thousands of years, complex tool creation, abstract thinking. They've achieved space travel through nothing but their own ingenuity. No precursor technology, no ancient artifacts to study. They built everything themselves. In the holding cell, Commander Morrison had stopped talking. He was looking directly at the observation window. Jalrek knew the glass was one way, that Morrison couldn't possibly see him. But the human's eyes seemed to track his position perfectly. It was as if he knew exactly where to look. Morrison raised one hand and waved slowly. Then he smiled. It was not a friendly expression. By the ancients, Jalrek whispered. He knows we're watching. They've been testing the cell, Crintal said. Subtle touches to the walls, observing guard rotations, checking ventilation patterns. They haven't tried to escape, but they're gathering information constantly. It's like they're studying us while we study them. Jalrek made a decision. He had built the greatest collection of apex predators in the galaxy. Now the universe had delivered something unique to his doorstep, something that might redefine what it meant to be an apex predator. Prepare Habitat 48, he ordered. Custom design based on their planet's biosphere. Multiple climate zones if possible. Crintal's eyes widened. You're adding them to the exhibit? Look at them, Jalrek said. They're not intimidating at first glance. They'll seem weak compared to our other specimens. But if what you're telling me is true, they might be the most interesting predators we've ever studied. The Ministry has been pressuring me to expand the collection. This will satisfy them and advance our research significantly. The Council will need to approve. I'll handle the Council. Begin the preparations. I want detailed monitoring of their behavior. If they're truly persistence hunters with tool-using intelligence, we need to understand how that combination functions in a controlled environment. Crintal hesitated. Curator, I feel I should express a concern. These creatures evolved intelligence as a survival trait. They're not just smart for predators. They might be genuinely sapient. Adding them to the exhibit could raise ethical questions. We'll conduct proper intelligence evaluations, Jalrek assured her. But preliminary scans show brain activity consistent with higher predators, not true sapients. They're clever, certainly, but so are Crithian razorhawks. Intelligence exists on a spectrum. We'll determine where they fall on that spectrum through observation. Down in the holding cell, Morrison had gathered his crew around him. They were speaking in low voices, but their body language suggested planning. One of them, a female with dark hair pulled back, was sketching something on the floor with her finger. Another, a male with red hair, was examining the cell's power distribution panel with obvious interest. Jalrek watched them for a long moment. Something about their behavior was unsettling in a way he couldn't quite define. They moved with purpose. They cooperated seamlessly, and they never stopped observing their environment. Begin the transfer tomorrow, he said finally. Sedate them if necessary, but I want them in Habitat 48 by the end of the cycle. And Crintal? Double the security protocols, just to be safe. As he left the intake facility, Jalrek felt a mixture of excitement and unease. He had spent decades studying predators, learning their patterns, understanding what made them deadly. But these humans were something different. They didn't fit the normal categories. They weren't the strongest or the fastest. They didn't have venom or claws or armored hides, but they had eliminated every predator that had ever threatened them on their homeworld. They had conquered an entire planet through nothing but intelligence and persistence. And now they were about to become the 48th species in the most comprehensive predator collection in the galaxy. Jalrek wondered, not for the first time, if he was making a mistake. Then he dismissed the thought. The exhibit had contained 47 deadly species without incident for decades. What possible threat could 13? Jake Morrison woke up on soft grass under an alien sun. His head pounded from whatever sedative they had used, but his training kicked in immediately. He remained still, eyes closed, listening and feeling before he moved. The air was warm with a slight breeze. He could hear water running somewhere nearby and the rustle of leaves overhead. Slowly, he opened his eyes and sat up. He was in a forest clearing, surrounded by trees that looked almost Earth-like but not quite. The bark was too smooth, the leaves too symmetrical. Above him, through the canopy, he could see a force field shimmering faintly against a purple sky. "Commander, you're awake. Thank God." That was Lisa Grant, his pilot. She was kneeling beside him, relief evident on her face. "We've all been coming around for the past hour. No one's injured, just groggy." Jake stood, his body protesting the movement. He looked around and saw his crew scattered throughout the clearing. Some were sitting up. Others were on their feet exploring the immediate area. He did a quick head count. 13 people, all accounted for. Everyone from the horizon's end was here. "Status report," he said, his voice rough. Paul Chen, his engineer, approached. The man was already holding a stick, examining it like it might reveal the secrets of the universe. "We're in some kind of artificial habitat. The trees are real, or at least biological. Water source about 50 meters north. The perimeter is sealed with energy barriers." I touched one briefly. "It's not lethal, but it's not pleasant either. I found something you need to see, Commander." That was Amy Rodriguez, his security officer. She was standing at the edge of the clearing, looking out through the trees. Jake followed her gaze and felt his stomach drop. Through the vegetation, he could see another habitat. And in that habitat was something that looked like a cross between a wolf and a lizard, easily the size of a horse. It was pacing along its own barrier, watching them with eyes that gleamed with predatory intelligence. "There are more," Amy said quietly. "Different habitats surrounding us. Different creatures in each one. I counted at least 8 separate enclosures from here." Jake's mind raced, putting the pieces together. The scans they had endured. The way the aliens had examined them like specimens rather than people. The custom habitat built to resemble Earth's biosphere. "We're in a zoo," he said flatly. "Or worse, some kind of collection." Kevin Walsh, their medic, joined them. "An apex predator collection, if I had to guess. Every creature I can see from here looks like it could tear us apart without much effort. Whatever our hosts think we are, they've grouped us with the most dangerous things they've found." Lisa laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They think we're predators? We're scientists and explorers. We don't even have weapons. We're human," Jake said. "That's weapon enough, given time." He gathered the crew together in the center of the clearing. Faces looked back at him with varying degrees of fear, confusion, and anger. These were good people. Engineers, scientists, explorers. They had signed up to discover new worlds, not to be put in cages. "Listen up," Jake said. "Our situation is bad, but it's not hopeless. We're alive. We're together. And we're apparently interesting enough that they want to study us rather than dissect us. That gives us advantages." "Advantages?" Danny Price, one of their younger crew members, shook his head. "Commander, we're trapped in an alien zoo. What advantages could we possibly have?" "Information," Paul said, catching on to Jake's thinking. "They're watching us. That means they don't understand us yet." "We can use that," Jake nodded. "Exactly. They've seen our records, maybe some of our history, but they don't know how we think. They don't know what makes us dangerous. And make no mistake, every human is dangerous when we need to be." He pointed at the energy barriers. "First priority is understanding this place. Paul, I want you to study those barriers. Don't try to break through yet. Just learn how they work. Amy, map this habitat. Find every resource we can use. Lisa, take inventory of what we have in our pockets, our clothes, anything we brought with us." "What about the rest of us?" asked Nathan Cole, their botanist. "Start building," Jake said simply. "Shelter first. We show them that humans don't just survive. We adapt, we improve, we create. Kevin, check everyone's health and see what plants in here might be useful for medicine or food. Nathan, you'll help him with plant identification." "You want us to put on a show?" Amy said, understanding dawning in her eyes. "I want us to be honest," Jake corrected. "We're being watched and studied, fine. Let's show them what humanity does best. We problem solve, we build, we cooperate, and we never ever stop adapting to our environment." The crew got to work. Jake watched as his people transformed from frightened captives into focused survivors. It was remarkable how quickly humans could shift gears when necessary. Fear didn't disappear, but it became fuel instead of paralysis. Paul spent hours examining the energy barriers, tossing small stones at different angles, observing the ripples of energy. He sketched diagrams in the dirt, muttering calculations to himself. Amy and Lisa mapped the habitat. discovering it was roughly circular, maybe 300 meters in diameter. It contained a diverse environment with forest, a small meadow, rocky outcroppings, and a stream that seemed to originate from a spring, and then disappeared underground at the habitat's edge. Nathan and Kevin identified several plant species that appeared safe. Some had edible fruits, others had medicinal properties similar to earth plants. It suggested the aliens had done their research on human biology. By late afternoon, they had constructed a basic shelter using fallen branches and large leaves. It wasn't pretty, but it was functional. More importantly, it demonstrated human ingenuity to whoever was watching. And they were definitely being watched. Jake could feel it. Sometimes he caught glimpses of movement beyond the barriers, alien faces pressed against transparent viewing panels. They were specimens, entertainment, scientific curiosities. "Commander, look at this." Paul had called him over to the barrier. The engineer was holding a small device he had apparently built from components in his utility belt. "The barrier operates on a frequency cycle. It's not constant. There are microsecond gaps in the field generation, probably for energy efficiency. Can we exploit that? Not to escape, not yet. The gaps are too small and too irregular. But it tells me something important. This technology isn't perfect. It has limitations. And anything with limitations can be understood and eventually overcome." Jake smiled. That was exactly the kind of thinking they needed. As the artificial sun began to set, the crew gathered around a small fire that Nathan had managed to start using friction and dry moss. They shared the fruits they had gathered and discussed their observations. "The creature in the habitat to our north hasn't stopped watching us," Amy reported. "Whatever it is, it's curious or hungry. Hard to tell. I saw something flying in one of the upper habitats," Lisa added. "Looked like a bird made of knives. Beautiful but terrifying. We're surrounded by things that could kill us easily," Kevin observed. "Yet we're sitting here making plans and roasting fruit. That's got to be confusing for whoever's watching." "Good," Jake said. "Let them be confused. Confusion leads to curiosity. Curiosity leads to observation. And observation gives us opportunities to learn about them while they think they're learning about us." Danny Price spoke up, his voice uncertain. "Commander, what if they never let us go? What if we're stuck here forever?" Jake looked at the young man. Danny was barely 25, fresh out of the academy. This was supposed to be his first exploration mission, a chance to see the wonders of the galaxy. Instead, he was caged like an animal. "Then we make the best of it," Jake said firmly. "But I don't think it will come to that. Whoever built this place, they're scientists. They value knowledge. Eventually, they'll realize we're not just clever animals. We're people, and people don't belong in cages." "And if they don't realize that?" Amy asked quietly. Jake's expression hardened. "Then we'll teach them, one way or another." As night fell, the crew took turns keeping watch. Jake sat with his back against a tree, looking up at the stars visible through the barrier. They were different stars, constellations he didn't recognize. He was far from home, farther than any human had ever been, but he wasn't alone. His crew was with him, and together humans could accomplish remarkable things. They had explored their entire planet, from the deepest oceans to the highest mountains. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They had reached into space itself through nothing but determination and ingenuity. A cage was just another problem to solve. A barrier was just another obstacle to overcome. He thought about the alien curator who had ordered them placed here. The being had looked at humans and seen animals, predators to be studied and displayed. But he had made a fundamental mistake, one that Jake intended to exploit fully. He had given them time to observe, to learn, to plan, to adapt, and time was the most dangerous thing you could give to a human being. Jake closed his eyes, but he didn't sleep. Instead, he began planning, not for tomorrow or next week, but for however long this took, because humanity's greatest weapon had never been strength or speed or natural weapons. It had always been patience, persistence, and the absolute refusal to accept impossible as an answer. The aliens wanted to see an apex predator. Fine, Jake would show them. 3 weeks had passed since Jake and his crew had awakened in the habitat. They had fallen into a routine that was equal parts survival and performance. Every action was calculated to demonstrate human capability while gathering more information about their captors and their prison. The shelter had evolved into a proper structure with walls, a roof, and separate sleeping areas. Paul had figured out how to weave plant fibers into cordage. which opened up dozens of new construction possibilities. Nathan had cultivated a small garden with the most nutritious plants. Kevin had created a surprisingly effective medical kit from local vegetation, but it was the weapons that had caught the most attention from their observers. Jake had started with simple spears, just sharpened sticks hardened in fire. Then Paul had figured out how to chip the local stone into crude but effective blades. Amy had designed an atlatl, a spear-throwing device that increased velocity and range dramatically. Within 2 weeks, they had progressed from defenseless captives to humans armed with increasingly sophisticated tools. The aliens watched everything. Jake could see them on the viewing platforms, their various forms pressing against the barriers. Sometimes there were dozens, sometimes hundreds. The humans had become a popular attraction, though Jake suspected not for the reasons the curator had intended. "They're disappointed," Lisa observed one morning as she practiced with her spear. "Look at their body language. They expected us to hunt, to kill, to be savage. Instead, we're building a civilization." "Not disappointed," Amy corrected, confused. "They don't know what to make of us." "That's good. Confusion creates opportunity." The opportunity arrived on the morning of the 22nd day. A section of the barrier shimmered and went transparent. Through it, Jake could see Curator Jalrek and the female scientist Krintal standing on a platform. The curator's voice boomed into the habitat through speakers Jake hadn't known existed. "Humans of Earth," Jalrek began. His language was alien, but somehow Jake understood it perfectly. "They must have translation technology. You have been observed for 21 cycles. Your behavior has been noted and recorded. It is now time to determine your position within the apex hierarchy." Jake exchanged glances with his crew. This was what they had been preparing for, though the specifics were unclear. "In 2 hours, 3 of your number will be transported to the arena. You will face the Yarnix pack in a dominance display. This is not a fight to the death, but submission or serious injury is expected. You may select which members of your group will participate. Prepare yourselves." The barrier returned to its normal state. The crew immediately gathered around Jake. "A dominance display," Paul said. "They're testing us against another species. Probably to establish some kind of pecking order." "The Yarnix," Kevin mused. "I've been watching the habitat to our northeast. Pack hunters, 6 of them, crystalline claws fast as hell. They took down one of those automated prey drones in under 30 seconds last week." 3 against 6 doesn't seem fair," Danny noted. Amy smiled grimly. "Depends on the 3. Commander, it should be me, you, and Danny. We've been training the most with the weapons." Jake considered. Danny was young, but he was strong, and he followed orders without hesitation. Amy was the best natural fighter they had, and Jake himself had spent 10 years in military service before becoming an explorer. "It was the logical choice, agreed," he said. "Paul, Kevin, Lisa, everyone else needs to make sure we're armed with the best weapons we have. We've got 2 hours to prepare." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. Paul selected 3 of his finest spears, each tipped with razor-sharp stone blades and balanced for throwing. Nathan created a paste from certain plants that he claimed would make their weapons more effective. Amy led Jake and Danny through rapid combat drills, practicing coordinated movements and tactical formations. "Remember," Amy said as they trained, "humans don't fight like animals. We fight like soldiers. We communicate, we adapt, we use strategy. These Yarnix are predators, but they're still working on instinct. We work on planning." "What if they're too fast?" Danny asked. The young man was trying to hide his fear, but Jake could see it in his eyes. "Then we make speed irrelevant," Jake said. "We control the space, we predict their movements, and we stay coordinated. A pack is only as strong as its weakest member. We find that weakness and exploit it." When the 2 hours had passed, a portal opened in the barrier. Jake, Amy, and Danny stepped through, each carrying 2 spears. They found themselves in a corridor that led to a much larger space. The arena. It was circular, maybe 50 meters across, with a dirt floor and high walls. Viewing platforms surrounded the space on all sides, packed with thousands of alien spectators. The noise was deafening, a cacophony of alien languages and excited chatter. "Well," Amy said dryly, "at least we're not boring them anymore." The 3 humans moved to the center of the arena. Jake looked up at the crowds, finding Curator Jalrek in a prominent viewing box. The alien was watching intently, all 4 of his arms gripping the railing. A gate opened on the opposite side of the arena. The Yarnix emerged. They were worse than Jake had imagined from a distance. Each was the size of a large wolf, but their bodies were covered in overlapping crystalline plates that caught the light like diamonds. Their claws were translucent and sharp as glass. Their eyes were multifaceted like an insect's, giving them nearly 360-degree vision. And they moved with a fluid grace that spoke of perfect evolutionary design. The pack spread out immediately, forming a semicircle. They were testing, observing, looking for weakness. Jake could see the intelligence in their movement. These weren't mindless beasts. They were experienced hunters. Formation Beta, Jake said quietly. The three humans shifted into a triangle formation, each watching a different angle. Wait for my signal. Danny, you're the anchor. Amy, you're with me on harassment. We make them come to us. The Yarniks began to circle, looking for an opening. The crowd noise faded to whispers. The tension built like a physical weight. Then one of the Yarniks darted forward, testing their reaction time. Amy's spear flashed out in a throwing motion. The Yarniks dodged easily, but that wasn't the point. The point was to establish that humans had range. The Yarniks pack hesitated, recalculating. They didn't expect that, Danny whispered. Good, Jake said. Now they know we can hurt them from a distance. Watch how they adjust. The pack did adjust, spreading wider, trying to force the humans to split their attention. It was good tactics for pack hunters, but they were thinking like predators, not like soldiers. 3 Yarniks rushed simultaneously from different angles. It was a coordinated assault designed to overwhelm through numbers and speed. Jake had been waiting for it. Now, the humans didn't scatter or panic. Danny braced and threw his spear at the nearest Yarniks with full strength. The creature dodged, but it broke its rhythm, disrupting the coordinated attack. Jake and Amy moved as one, shifting to present a unified front against the other 2 attackers. Amy used her spear as a staff, deflecting crystalline claws with the wooden shaft. Jake thrust at eyes and joints, forcing his Yarniks to defend rather than attack. The coordination was perfect, each human supporting the others, never exposing a weak point. The Yarniks retreated, regrouping. They seemed confused. Their instincts told them to attack, but the humans were dangerous at both close and far range. More importantly, the humans fought as a single organism, each member anticipating the other's movements. They're learning, Amy noted. Next attack will be different, she was right. The Yarniks split into 2 groups. 3 attacked from the front as a distraction, while the other 3 tried to flank. It was more sophisticated tactics, showing genuine intelligence. But humans had been dealing with flanking maneuvers since the invention of warfare. Danny, hold center. Amy, right flank with me. They shifted smoothly. Danny planted his spear point first in the ground, creating a barrier against the frontal assault. Jake and Amy wheeled right, moving to intercept the flanking attack before it could gain position. The next few minutes were a blur of movement. Spears thrust and parried. Crystalline claws flashed in the artificial light. The Yarniks were fast and strong, but the humans were unpredictable. They used tactics the Yarniks had never seen, coordinated movements that seemed to anticipate attacks before they happened. Jake caught one Yarniks across the snout with his spear shaft, using the blunt end deliberately. The creature recoiled, more shocked than hurt. The message was clear. The humans could have caused serious injury, but chose not to. They were fighting with restraint. The crowd had gone completely silent. Every alien eye was fixed on the impossible scene below. 3 soft-skinned primates were holding their own against 6 apex predators. Amy scored the first actual hit, her spear tip catching a Yarniks on the shoulder plate. The crystal cracked but didn't shatter. The Yarniks yelped and retreated. It wasn't a serious injury, but it was a wound. Blood was drawn. The psychological impact was enormous. The Yarniks pack hesitated, their coordination breaking down. They had expected an easy victory, a chance to establish dominance over weak newcomers. Instead, they were in a real fight. Jake pressed the advantage. He threw his remaining spear not to hit, but to herd. The Yarniks dodged, moving exactly where Jake wanted. Amy was... Crintle had not slept in 3 days. Her laboratory was covered in data displays, each showing different aspects of human physiology and behavior. The more she learned, the more disturbed she became. Look at this, she said to curator Jalrek as he entered her workspace. She pulled up a holographic model of the human cardiovascular system. Their hearts are incredibly efficient, but that's not the remarkable part. It's their cooling system. They sweat. They excrete water through their skin to regulate body temperature. Many species perspire, Jalrek said, though he sounded tired. The incident in the arena 3 days ago had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. Not like this. Humans can maintain activity almost indefinitely without overheating. I've been reviewing Earth's historical records. There are documented cases of humans running for hundreds of kilometers without stopping. They can maintain pursuit of prey for days at a time. The prey animals eventually collapse from heat exhaustion, while the human is still capable of continuing. Crintal brought up another display, and their accuracy with throwing weapons. I've analyzed the arena footage. Commander Morrison's spear throws were accurate within 2 centimeters at 15 meters. While moving, while under stress, that level of accuracy with projectile weapons is unheard of in nature. They evolved specifically to throw objects with lethal precision. Jalrek studied the data, his discomfort growing. What are you saying? I'm saying we've made a classification error. We thought they were apex predators. But they're something else entirely. They're endurance hunters with tool-using intelligence. That combination doesn't exist anywhere else in our records. The Krithian Razorhawks use simple tools, Jalrek countered. Simple tools, yes. Sticks to extend their reach. But humans create complex tools and improve them constantly. In just 3 weeks, they've progressed from sharpened sticks to composite weapons with multiple components. They're not just using tools, Curator. They're engineering them. Crintal pulled up surveillance footage from the human habitat. It showed Jake sitting near the barrier, carefully studying the energy patterns. And watch this. He's been sitting there for 6 hours. Not moving, just observing. Then he'll return to his shelter, make notes in the dirt, and come back the next day to observe again. He's conducting research on the barrier systems. To escape? No, that's what's interesting. If escape was his only goal, he could have attempted something reckless by now. Instead, he's being methodical. He's learning how the system works before he decides what to do with that knowledge. That's not animal intelligence. That's scientific method. Jalrek watched the footage in silence. Morrison finally stood, stretched, and returned to his crew. The human moved with easy confidence, showing no signs of stress despite being caged for weeks. There's something else. Crintal continued. She pulled up more footage, this time showing the humans engaged in various activities. They've started creating art. Look here. Drawings on the rocks, symbols carved into wood, and not random marks. These are representations of their ship, their journey, Earth itself. They're telling their story. Why would they do that? Because they know we're watching. Everything they do is being observed. So they're using that observation as communication. They're showing us they have culture, history, abstract thought. They're trying to prove they're more than animals. Jalrek felt a chill run through his body. You think they're sapient? I think we need to conduct immediate cognitive evaluations, full-spectrum intelligence tests, because if they are truly sapient and we've been treating them as exhibit specimens. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The implications were clear and deeply troubling. Back in the habitat, Jake was conducting his own analysis. He sat with Paul and Amy, speaking in low voices while the rest of the crew engaged in their daily tasks. The barriers operate on a 60-second cycle, Paul explained, drawing diagrams in the dirt. There are microsecond gaps in the energy field, but they're too irregular to exploit. However, I've noticed the power draw increases significantly during viewing hours. They're maintaining multiple barriers simultaneously, plus the force field separating all 48 habitats. Energy intensive, Jake observed. Extremely. Which means there must be a central power generation facility, probably underground, definitely shielded. But every system has access points, maintenance corridors, weak spots. Amy added her observations. The guard rotations are precise. Every 6 hours exactly. Always the same number of personnel. I've identified 3 different species working as guards, but they don't communicate much between shifts. Suggests a hierarchical system where information isn't shared laterally. Security flaw, Jake said. If we do something during a shift change, the response will be delayed while they brief each other. Do we want to escape? Paul asked bluntly. Or are we playing a longer game? Jake considered the question carefully. Escape would be temporary. We don't know where we are, we don't have a ship, and we'd be fugitives in alien territory. But if we can prove we're not animals, if we can convince them we're people who deserve rights and protection, that's permanent. That gets us home. So we continue the demonstration, Amy said. We escalate it, Jake corrected. We've shown them we can fight. Now we show them we can think, create, and reason. We make it impossible for them to ignore our intelligence. Over the next week, the human habitat transformed. The crew constructed a more elaborate shelter with separate rooms and furniture. Nathan created dyes from plants, and the crew used them to paint elaborate murals on rock faces, depicting human history from cave paintings to space travel. Paul built increasingly complex machines from available materials, demonstrating understanding of physics and engineering. Kevin established what he called office hours, where crew members could come to him with medical concerns. He maintained detailed records of everyone's health, creating a written medical log on prepared bark paper. The record-keeping itself was a display of abstract thought and planning for the future. Lisa organized the crew into a schedule, creating a calendar system marked on a large flat stone. Days were tracked, tasks were assigned, and rest periods were mandated. It was civilization in miniature, and every aspect was visible to their observers. The viewing platforms were packed constantly now. Word had spread throughout the Varanthian Empire about the strange new exhibit. The humans who fought like soldiers, built like engineers, and thought like scientists. Jake made sure every action served multiple purposes. When they cooked food over their fire, it demonstrated controlled use of chemistry. When they made rope from plant fibers, it showed understanding of material properties. When they carved tools, it revealed fine motor control and planning. But more than any of that, they demonstrated something that truly unnerved their captors. They never stopped improving. "They're different every day," Crintal reported to Jalrek during a late-night review session. "Every single day they build something new, improve something existing, or develop a new technique. It's not just intelligence. It's relentless, directed progress." Jalrek watched footage of Jake teaching Danny how to properly throw a spear. The teaching itself was significant. It showed transmission of knowledge, patience, and investment in the future. "The Council is demanding answers," Jalrek said quietly. "The humans have climbed to 15th in the hierarchy after 3 challenge victories. They're scheduled for another dominance display next week, but I'm beginning to question if we should continue. You're wondering if we've made a mistake. I'm wondering if we've caged something far more dangerous than we realized. Not physically dangerous, but..." He gestured at the screens showing the industrious humans. "They're changing the dynamic of the entire exhibit. Other predator species are behaving differently. They watch the humans constantly. Some show signs of stress. Others seem curious. It's like they can sense something we're only beginning to understand." Crintal pulled up her latest analysis. "I've completed the cognitive evaluations based on behavioral observation. Mathematical problem-solving demonstrated. Abstract reasoning demonstrated. Tool creation and improvement demonstrated. Social cooperation highly sophisticated. Language complexity extreme. Cultural expression confirmed. Self-awareness undeniable." She highlighted the final conclusion on her report. "Curator, by every scientific measure we have, humans are fully sapient. They're not sophisticated animals. They're people. We've been keeping people in a zoo." The silence that followed was heavy with implications. The Varanthian Empire prided itself on ethical scientific practices. They studied predators to understand nature, not to abuse sentient beings. If Crintal's assessment was correct, they had committed an enormous moral violation. "We need to inform the High Council," Jalrek said finally. "This is beyond my authority to resolve. What will they do? I don't know. But we can't continue to treat them as exhibit specimens. It's not right." In the habitat, Jake sat by the barrier as he did every evening, ostensibly watching the sunset. But his real focus was on the viewing platforms above. He could see the alien curator and the scientist having an intense discussion. Their body language suggested disagreement or concern. "They're figuring it out," Lisa said quietly, sitting down beside him. The announcement came without warning. Curator Jalrek stood at the barrier of the human habitat, his forearms held in a gesture that Jake had learned meant formal address. "Humans of Earth," his translated voice boomed. "The High Council has reviewed your performance in the hierarchy challenges. Your victories have been noted with significant interest. However, questions remain about your true capabilities and your proper classification within our collection." Jake felt his stomach tighten. This wasn't the liberation announcement he had been hoping for. This was something else. Therefore, the Council has ordered a final assessment. In 14 cycles, 5 members of your group will face the Drakmar in a dominance display. This encounter will determine your final position in the apex hierarchy. The barrier shimmered back to opacity. The crew stood in stunned silence. The Drakmar, Kevin finally said, his voice barely a whisper. I've been watching that thing. It's in the habitat at the far northern edge. It's massive, 12 feet tall, maybe more. Reptilian. I've seen it tear through steel reinforcement in its enclosure when they fed it. It's ranked first, Amy added. I've been keeping track. The Drakmar has never lost a dominance display. Every other predator in this facility submits to it. Paul looked at Jake. They're not trying to rank us anymore. They're trying to eliminate us. This is an execution dressed up as a test. Jake didn't respond immediately. He walked to the barrier and stared out at the other habitats, his mind racing through possibilities. 14 days. 2 weeks to prepare for a battle against something that outweighed them by several hundred pounds and had natural weapons that could tear through metal. Commander? Lisa prompted gently. Jake turned to face his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, but also trust. They were looking to him for a plan, for hope, for the impossible solution that humans always seem to pull out of nowhere when things looked darkest. We have 2 weeks, he said calmly. That's longer than we had for the Yarnix fight. And we're not the same crew we were then. We're stronger, smarter, better equipped. Most importantly, we know something the Drakmar doesn't. What's that? Danny asked. It's never fought a human before. It doesn't know what we're capable of. Every victory it's had has been against creatures that fight on instinct. We don't fight on instinct. We fight on planning, Amy stepped forward. Commander, I've watched that thing. It's not just big and strong. It has regenerative abilities. I've seen it heal from wounds in minutes. How do we fight something that can't be hurt? We don't try to hurt it permanently, Jake said, a plan starting to form in his mind. We try to teach it something. Teach it what? That humans are the wrong species to mess with. The next 14 days were the most intense preparation period of their captivity. Every waking moment was spent planning, training, and building. The crew operated like a military unit preparing for war because that's exactly what they were doing. Paul's engineering skills went into overdrive. He created compound bows from flexible wood, animal sinew that Kevin had preserved from their meat rations, and carefully carved levers. The bows could launch arrows with tremendous force, far more than any thrown spear. He also created fire-starting kits, multiple backup weapons, and a variety of tools whose purposes he kept mostly to himself. Kevin worked on chemistry. He identified plants with toxins, others with sedative properties, and still others that caused intense irritation to skin and eyes. He created pastes, powders, and liquid extracts, each carefully labeled and stored in containers made from hollowed gourds. Nathan provided information on every plant in their habitat, helping Kevin identify which substances might affect reptilian biology. They had no way to test the compounds on the Drakmar itself, but Nathan's knowledge of Earth biochemistry gave them educated guesses. Amy designed the tactics. She studied every piece of footage they could see of the Drakmar through the barriers. She watched how it moved, how it attacked, how it reacted to different stimuli. She created diagrams in the dirt, planning attack patterns, fallback positions, and contingency plans for every scenario she could imagine. Lisa took on logistics, making sure everyone's equipment was maintained, that all weapons were properly balanced and tested, that supplies were organized and accessible. She ran drills, timing how quickly the team could transition between different formations and strategies. Danny and the rest of the crew trained relentlessly. They practiced shooting arrows until their fingers bled, then wrapped their hands and practiced more. They drilled combat formations until they could shift positions without conscious thought. They ran endurance exercises to build their already impressive stamina even further. And Jake observed everything, coordinating the efforts, identifying weaknesses, and maintaining morale. At night, when others slept, he sat by the barrier and watched the Drakmar's distant habitat, studying his enemy. The creature was magnificent in a terrifying way. Its scales were deep green, almost black, and appeared to be thick enough to stop most conventional weapons. Its claws were longer than Jake's forearms. Its jaws could crush stone. When it moved, the ground shook, but Jake also noticed things that gave him hope. The Drakmar was solitary, not a pack hunter. It relied on strength and durability rather than speed or tactics. It was intelligent for a predator, but it fought with instinct-driven aggression rather than calculated strategy. And, most importantly, it had never faced an opponent that would retreat, regroup, and attack again with modified tactics. The humans had one overwhelming advantage. They could learn and adapt mid-battle. The question was whether they could learn fast enough. On the 13th night, Jake gathered the team that would enter the arena. He had chosen Amy, Paul, Danny, and Lisa. Each brought unique skills that would be essential. "Tomorrow we're going to do something that seems impossible," he said quietly. "We're going to face the biggest, strongest, most dangerous predator in this entire facility, and we're going to make it submit to us. Not through superior strength, not through natural weapons, but through something uniquely human." "What's that?" Paul asked. "Stubbornness," Jake said with a slight smile. "The Drakmar has never faced prey that refused to quit. Every other species here submits when the pain gets too great or the odds look impossible. But humans? We're the species that conquered a planet not because we were the biggest or strongest, but because we absolutely refused to give up. We're going to teach the Drakmar what that means." He looked each of them in the eyes. "I won't lie. Tomorrow will be the hardest thing any of us have ever done. We will get hurt. We will get tired. We will reach points where every instinct tells us to quit, but we won't, because we're human and humans don't quit." Amy gripped her bow tighter. "We're with you, Commander." "All the way." The others nodded agreement. In their eyes, Jake saw fear, yes, but also determination and a fierce pride. They were facing impossible odds, and they were going to face them together. The morning arrived too quickly. The 5 selected humans gathered their equipment: multiple bows and quivers of arrows, spears with various tip designs, Kevin's chemical compounds carefully stored in sealed containers, fire-starting equipment, everything they had built over weeks of preparation. The rest of the crew lined up to see them off. Kevin checked everyone's health one final time. Nathan handed out concentrated nutrition pastes. Each crew member who wasn't fighting touched the shoulders of those who were, a silent gesture of support and solidarity. The portal opened. Jake led his team through. The arena was different this time, larger, at least 70 meters across. The floor was rougher, with rocks and obstacles scattered throughout. The viewing platforms were packed beyond capacity, aliens standing shoulder to appendage to witness what everyone expected to be a massacre. The 5 humans spread out as they had planned, each taking a designated position. They didn't group together defensively. Instead, they positioned themselves to maximize coverage and create multiple angles of attack. They checked their weapons, secured their equipment, and waited. The gate on the opposite side of the arena began to open. The crowd noise dropped to absolute silence. The Drakmar emerged. It was even more massive than Jake had thought. Nearly 13 feet of muscle, scale, and predatory fury. Its eyes were intelligent and cruel. Its claws scraped furrows in the stone floor as it walked. When it saw the humans, it paused, assessing these small creatures that dared to stand before it. Then it roared. The sound was deafening, primal, a challenge that had made countless predators submit without a fight. The humans didn't submit. Jake calmly drew an arrow and shot it at the Drakmar's face. The arrow struck near the creature's eye and bounced off the scales, but it served its purpose. The message was clear. These prey would fight back. The Drakmar charged, and the battle began. What happened over the next 3 hours would be studied by xenobiologists for generations. 5 small primates armed with primitive weapons faced a creature that could tear them apart with a single blow. And they didn't just survive. They fought with a coordination and adaptability that shouldn't have been possible. They used hit-and-run tactics, never staying still long enough for the Drakmar to land a solid attack. They used fire to control the creature's movements, forcing it into positions where they had advantages. The High Council chamber was a vast dome of crystalline architecture, designed to inspire awe in those who entered. Today it inspired only dread in Curator Jalrek as he stood before the 7 council members, each representing a different region of the Varanthian Empire. Krintal stood beside him, her data displays hovering in the air between them and the council. The footage of the Drakmar battle played on repeat, and with each viewing, the council members seemed to grow more unsettled. "Explain this," Council Prime demanded, her voice sharp. "The Drakmar has never been defeated. It has never even been challenged successfully. Yet 5 of these humans made it submit through what appears to be exhaustion and psychological warfare." "That's exactly what they did," Krintal confirmed. She pulled up biometric data from the battle. The Drakmar suffered 93 distinct injuries during the encounter. Individually, none were life-threatening, but collectively they overwhelmed its regenerative capabilities. But the physical damage wasn't what caused submission. It was the psychological realization that the humans would never stop. No matter how many times it attacked, they persisted. They adapted. They learned. She brought up another display showing human physiology. Humans are endurance hunters. Their cardiovascular efficiency, their cooling system through perspiration, their ability to track and plan over extended periods. These evolved specifically for persistence hunting. They would follow prey for days until the prey literally died of exhaustion. They're applying that same strategy in combat. That doesn't explain the tactical sophistication, another council member objected. The coordination, the tool use, the strategic adaptation. Because they're not just endurance hunters, Jalrek said, finding his voice. They're sapient endurance hunters. That combination has never existed in our records because it's uniquely dangerous. Most sapient species evolved from prey animals that developed intelligence as a defense mechanism. Humans evolved from predators that developed intelligence as a hunting tool. The council chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering and deeply troubling. Crintal continued her presentation. I've completed comprehensive cognitive evaluations based on 6 weeks of observation. The results are undeniable. Humans demonstrate mathematical reasoning, abstract thought, cultural expression, teaching and learning behaviors, tool innovation, long-term planning, and self-awareness. By every standard we use to define sapience, they qualify. We haven't been keeping apex predators in our exhibit. We've been keeping people. That's impossible, Council Prime said, but her voice lacked conviction. Our initial scans showed brain activity consistent with sophisticated predators, not true sapience. Because we were looking for the wrong markers, Crintal explained. Most sapient species have large brain regions dedicated to threat assessment, and social cooperation evolved from prey behaviors. Humans have those too, but they also have enormous regions dedicated to spatial reasoning, pattern recognition, and motor control for tool use and throwing accuracy. We mistook predatory intelligence for animal intelligence when in fact it's a different manifestation of sapience. Jalrek stepped forward. Council, I take full responsibility for this catastrophic error. I should have conducted more thorough evaluations before approving the exhibit. But the immediate concern is what we do now. We're holding sapient beings against their will. We forced them to fight for entertainment. We violated our own ethical standards in the worst possible way. Releasing them poses its own problems, another council member said. They've been inside our most secure facility for over a month. They've observed our technology, our security protocols, our weaknesses. If they're as intelligent as you claim, they've learned far too much. Then what do you suggest? Jalrek demanded. We continue to imprison sentient beings. That would make us no better than the slavers we fought wars to eliminate. There's another consideration, Crintal said quietly. She pulled up a new set of data that made Jalrek's blood run cold. Humans haven't attempted escape yet, but that's not because they can't. Engineer Paul Chen has been systematically mapping our power distribution network. Security Officer Amy Rodriguez has documented every guard rotation, every security measure, every potential vulnerability. Commander Jake Morrison has been conducting what can only be described as intelligence-gathering operations. She showed footage of Jake sitting by the barrier, apparently doing nothing, hour after hour. This looks passive, but watch his eye movements. He's tracking patrol patterns, memorizing layouts, noting response times to various incidents. He's not planning an escape. He's planning several escapes, evaluating each and choosing the optimal approach. They're preparing for war, Council Prime said. Realization dawning. Not immediate conflict, but long-term strategic positioning. Exactly, Crintal confirmed. And here's what truly concerns me. They're not just planning their own escape. Watch this. She showed footage of Jake standing near the barriers to other enclosures, making strange gestures and sounds. He's attempting communication with the other predator species. We thought it was harmless curiosity, but I've analyzed the patterns. He's establishing basic signaling protocols, body language, simple vocalizations. Some of the predators are responding. That's impossible, a council member protested. Cross-species communication requires years of study and sophisticated translation technology. For most species, yes. But humans evolved to be endurance hunters, which requires tracking prey across vast distances in varied terrain. They developed pattern recognition far beyond normal parameters. They see connections and systems that other species miss. Commander Morrison is applying that to xenobiology, and he's succeeding. Jalrek felt the weight of what they had done settling on his shoulders. We caged a species that specializes in analyzing and overcoming obstacles. We gave them time to study us. We demonstrated our technology and our vulnerabilities, and we did all this while treating them as animals, which means they have no reason to trust us or cooperate with us. Recommendations? Council Prime asked, her voice weary. Immediate diplomatic contact, Jalrek said. Full disclosure of our error. Formal apology and offer of reparations. Recognition of their sapient status and protection under interstellar law. And most importantly, we give them a reason to choose cooperation over confrontation. And if they choose confrontation anyway, then we'll have confirmed that we've made an enemy of the most persistent, adaptable, and dangerous species we've ever encountered. The council deliberated in hushed tones while Jalrek and Krintal waited. Finally, Council Prime spoke. Curator Jalrek, you are authorized to initiate diplomatic contact with the humans, offer them full status as sapient beings, immediate release from the exhibit, transportation to neutral space, and whatever reasonable compensation they request. Make it clear this was a catastrophic error in classification, not deliberate enslavement, and pray they're more forgiving than we deserve. In the human habitat, Jake sat with his senior crew as the artificial sun set over their enclosure. They had been discussing contingencies for the past hour. Security's been lighter since the Drakmar fight, Amy reported. Fewer guards, longer response times. Either they're getting complacent or they're deliberately reducing their presence. They know, Jake said simply. They figured out we're sapient and they're scrambling to decide what to do about it. How long do we wait before we implement Plan B? Paul asked. We give them another week. If they haven't made contact by then, we assume they plan to keep us imprisoned despite knowing the truth. At that point, we move. Commander, Lisa said quietly, do you really think we could escape? Even if we get out of the habitat, we're on an alien station in unfamiliar space. We don't have a ship. Jake smiled grimly. We wouldn't need to escape the entire facility. Just to somewhere we can make a stand and force negotiations. Paul's mapped the maintenance corridors. Amy's identified the least defended areas. We have allies now. He gestured toward the other enclosures where various predators had learned to recognize human signals. The creatures you've been talking to, Danny said. They'd help us? Some of them. Enough to create chaos, which is all we'd need. Humans don't win through superior force. We win through superior strategy. We turn every advantage the enemy has into a weakness. We make ourselves too costly to fight and too valuable to kill. That's quite a plan, Kevin observed. Assuming it doesn't get us all killed. I'm hoping we won't need it, Jake admitted. I'm hoping they're smarter than that. But if they're not, we'll remind them of something important. What's that? Never back a human into a corner. We came from a planet where everything was trying to kill us, and we didn't just survive. We conquered the whole planet. We're not good at giving up. The next morning, the barrier to their habitat shimmered and became fully transparent. Curator Jalrek stood on the other side, but this time he wasn't on a viewing platform high above. He was at ground level, just meters away from the humans, with minimal security. It was a gesture of respect and vulnerability. Jake recognized it immediately. Commander Morrison, Jalrek began, his voice translated but his tone clearly conveying nervousness. I come before you to offer a formal apology on behalf of the Varanthian Empire and to request an audience.